If I had to pick one guilty pleasure in life, it would have to be tiramisu. It's always been my favorite dessert, and until recently, I didn't know how it was made. I learned when I came to Italy that it was made with raw eggs. Now, something about me is that when I know what goes into something, I get disgusted and suddenly it's not my favorite anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was still eating it at restaurants, but I just wasn't able to make it and then able to eat it after I make it, because then I get to see what I'm putting in and then I get grossed out. I got past that. We matured past that. So I can't have my favorite tiramisu in Italy anymore, because in the last year I've developed a caffeine sensitivity. I was already pretty sensitive to caffeine, but now if I even eat just one little tiramisu, I can't sleep all night, and that's not okay. And unfortunately they don't make decaf tiramisu around here because, let's face it, Italians live off of espresso. Like, they have it in the morning, they have it at 5 o'clock, and then they go to sleep and they're fine. I happen to not be fine. So yeah, I had to learn how to make tiramisu, and my standards are pretty high, so it was a bit of a challenge. So I have 3 criteria that it has to meet. And number 1 is it has to be decaf. I already mentioned that. Number 2, it has to be thick, like creamy. My pet peeve is when tiramisu is like melty or liquidy. I hate that. It has to be like cake. So that is number 2. And then number 3 is it has to be not too sweet. My favorite tiramisu was in one of these, restaurants, local restaurants, and it was so good because it wasn't too sweet. Every single dessert for me is too sweet. And this one wasn't too sweet. It was a perfect mixture of creamy, bitter, from the coffee, and then a little bit sweet. It was just so good. So I made it a challenge for myself to replicate that tiramisu. And you would think that P would help me with this, because she always says, oh, I used to make the best tiramisu. I used to make it all the time. Yeah, back when I was, yeah. And whenever I ask her, so how do you make it? She goes, I don't remember. It's like from a past life. So no help there. I had to figure it out by myself, and with the help of TikTok and Instagram and all those lovely creators. So yeah, I figured it out. I made it the other day, and it was so good. It was so good that I ate it in 2 days. So I have to make it again. And I'm going to show you guys how I made it, and it's perfect. And if you want to make it too, you're more than welcome to. The only thing I altered in this recipe was the sugar. I put less than what the recipe calls for, and for me it was perfect. So yeah, whenever I do recipes, it's just always too sweet. Instead of 2/3 of a cup, I decided to put 1/3 of a cup of sugar, and that was perfect for me. I'm going to show you guys the process. It's actually really easy, but you do need a mixer, like an electric mixer of some sort, and you'll see why. So I'll show you guys how it's done. It's very easy. Here's my little recipe. So you will need 500 grams of mascarpone cheese, 3 eggs, a pinch of salt. I think it's 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. That's the exact amount. 1/3 of a cup of sugar, coffee, and savoiardi, ladyfingers in English. So the first thing you're gonna do is separate the 3 eggs, the yolks from the whites, and I'm using room temperature eggs. I don't know why. They always recommend room temperature. I think maybe it helps the sugar dissolve in the egg whites. We're going with room temperature eggs. Yeah, there will be raw eggs in this recipe, so just, brace yourself for that. But it's just too good. You have to make this recipe. This is the original Italian way to do it. I know some American recipes use whipped cream instead of egg whites, and mascarpone is such a heavy, fatty, creamy cheese. I can't imagine adding more fat on top of that in the form of whipped cream, because that's also fat. So it would be just too heavy in my opinion. I think they're safe here. So I don't know. Get farm fresh eggs. Wash them. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. So we're going to mix the 3 egg yolks with the mascarpone and the of a teaspoon of salt, and you just want to mix that until it's incorporated. It doesn't say to whip it or anything, but I'll whip it a little bit at the end. Of course, in the meantime, I made some coffee. You need strong coffee, so I'm making it in a mocha pot, but you can use espresso. If you have an espresso machine, that's the best way to go. You just want really strong coffee. I'm making, of course, decaf, but you can make it any which way you want. And did you know, this is the only thing P taught me, that tiramisu actually means something in Italian. I didn't know this. So apparently it means pull me up, but mine doesn't pull me up because it's decaf. So Paula was saying you should call it tiramisu, pull me down, because it's decaf. But I like it that way. I need a nice calm tiramisu. I think it pulls you up anyway because of the sugar and the flavor, so we don't need the caffeine here. So you're gonna start whipping the egg whites, and when they get foamy, you start gradually adding the 1/3 of a cup of sugar until it gets to the stage of stiff peaks. It's called stiff peaks. So you want to whip it for like a good, 5 minutes. Actually, it took me more than 5 minutes. It depends on the speed of your mixer. You just want to whip it until it's this consistency, basically. And you add the sugar gradually so that it dissolves and it's not grainy and all of that. And that's it. That's basically it. Now we're gonna gradually incorporate the egg yolk and mascarpone mixture with our egg whites very gradually. So you fold it in so you don't lose the airy whipped goodness that you've created. And once that's all incorporated, that's it. We're just gonna put it together now. You dip your cookies in the coffee. I let the coffee cool down. So you dip your cookies and you layer it up, and that's it. And that's my perfect tiramisu recipe. Oh, and then you put some cocoa powder on top. Then I let it just refrigerate for a few hours. You want all the flavors to incorporate and get nice and thick. But even without refrigerating, you can see how thick it is. Like, it's not going anywhere. It's good. It's really, really good. Anyway, I just wanted to share this recipe with you all in case you're also like me and you have difficulties finding and deciding on a recipe and then successfully managing to make the recipe. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. And it doesn't taste like eggs. It really doesn't. I don't know what happens in this process, but it doesn't taste like eggs. And that was my biggest worry. Will it taste like eggs? Apparently not. It just tastes like heaven in my mouth. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.